Hello students, in today's session we will discuss the chapter known as drug house management. This chapter is very important from practical point of view because after completing diploma in pharmacy, when you go for start your own medical store, what are the various activities that should be undertaken for starting a new drug store? What are the various legal requirements? What are the various documents required to open a new drug store? All these things are very easily covered under this chapter. So the various content of the chapters are advantages and disadvantages. I won't read all these things. Rather, as you know, after obtaining required qualification, that means diploma in pharmacy or degree in pharmacy, as well as after having uh, ample of experience for starting a new drugstore, the student pharmacist who is having aptitude, who is willing to start a new drugstore, and he or she is ready to invest uh, money for starting a new drugstore. Such a student has to take one more step. That means he has to search for ideal location for starting a new drugstore. So what are the various locations where the new drugstore can be open? As you know, drugstore can be open in rural area, in small, that means or in small town, and urban area, or in big cities, as well as new drugstore can be opened at an industrial town. What are the various advantages and disadvantages of starting a new drugstore in different locations? We will discuss it one by one. As you can see, the various advantages of starting a new drugstore in rural area. We will discuss it first. The very first advantage is you need limited finance for starting a new drugstore in rural area. Why? Because the cost of land is comparatively low. Then low rate of interest rate. Easily you can get a loan for starting a new drugstore in rural area, and that too at a lower rate of interest. Then easily availability of space. The space is very easily available as compared to the urban area or in big cities, because the competition is low. Greater scope for future expansion, and lower wages means you have to pay lower wages to the workers who are working in your drugstore. Wages are comparatively low. Then disadvantages of starting a new drugstore in rural area. The very first disadvantage is there is a limited supply of skilled labor. Means salesmen that you want to appoint in your drugstore, they are not readily available in the rural area. Then difficulties in procurement of material, difficulties in procurement of supplies, as the retailer has to procure his all supplies from the wholesaler, and most of the wholesalers are situated in the big cities or in urban area. So there is a difficulty in procurement of a material. Buying capacity of the people is less in rural area. Most of the population of the rural area belongs to the farming background. So as compared to the urban area, the buying capacity of the customer, the buying capacity of the people who are residing in the rural area is less. In luxury goods like cosmetics, the sale of luxury goods like cosmetic is less in rural area. Then proprietor, the owner has to arrange large finance, and illiteracy is more in case of the rural area. These are the main disadvantages of starting a new drugstore in the rural area. Now, the other location for starting a new drugstore is urban area or big cities. The drugstore can easily be started in urban area also. Now, what are the main advantages of starting a new drugstore in urban area? Let's discuss it one by one. The very first advantage is procurement of material is easy, as most of the wholesalers are situated in urban area. So the person who has started his or her drugstore in the urban area can easily procure the material. There is no need to go far for procuring the supplies. Then better supply of skilled person as compared to the rural area. Better sales of goods. Sales turnover is more in urban areas, buying capacity of customer is more. So sale of luxury goods like cosmetic is more as compared to the rural area. Better health and medical services can be provided in the urban area or big cities. Better transport and communication facilities are available. Then disadvantages of starting a new drugstore in urban area or in big cities. The very first is higher rate of land due to competition. The prices are more in the urban area or in big cities. Higher municipal taxes and restrictions on the use of land. The various laws and bylaws has to be followed when you are starting your drugstore in the urban areas, and taxes are more. Higher wages have to pay to the person who are working in your drugstore, and overcrowding and its evils. Now, there are some factors that should be kept in mind while selecting a site for starting a new drugstore. What are the various factors that one has to think before starting a new drugstore? So, name of the factors, I'll read it one by one. Availability of finance, business locality, thickly populated residential areas, developing areas, hospitals, flow of traffic, parking, drugstore, and near to hotel, school, seminar hall. These are the few key points of the factors. We'll discuss it one by one. Now, the very first factor for selecting a site for a new drugstore is availability of the finance. Definitely, finance plays very important role for starting any new establishment. So, availability of the finance is the most important factor. Sufficient finance and meager financial resources mainly affect on opening of the drugstore. Business locality. It is preferable to open a new drugstore in a business locality because the number of people who are visiting such a locality is quite large. It is a marketplace, so number of people visiting such a marketplace is more. Opening a drugstore in such a locality required huge investment, no doubt, because when you are thinking to start your new establishment, your new drugstore at a marketplace at a business locality, then you need to have huge investment because of high rent and land prices. Third factor is thickly populated residential area. Such area is also preferable site for starting a new drugstore because people may buy required medicine during their evening walk. This is just to say, but when your drugstore is open in the residential area, the people who are living in that area, they easily buy their medicine from the nearest drugstore. Developing area. Nowadays, in big cities, new localities are coming up very fast. So, developing area is the ideal site for opening a new drugstore because the most important is there is no problem of competition. Competition is nil. There is no competition in developing areas. Drugstore will meet the needs of its customer by extending all types of facilities. Drugstore there to supply the medicine, but apart from the medicine, some other goods, the goods which are required on daily basis by the customer who are living in that area. Such goods can be easily supplied by the drugstore also. Hospitals, hospital and nursing homes does not having its own drugstore and physician have a good practice, then it's ideal one for opening a drugstore. Hospital and the nursing home. This is the best site for starting a new drugstore. Flow of traffic. Avoid locations near traffic signals because shop in the vicinity in the nearby area of the traffic signal has to face parking problem due to signals. It is difficult for a customer to park their vehicle. Avoid locations near traffic signal because shop in the vicinity of the traffic signal has to face parking problems for cars, scooters, and cycles. Avoid the one-way traffic and road circle, the road that leads to only one end. One-way traffic should be avoided for starting a new drugstore. Road circles, probably, it is not a good site for starting a drugstore. Parking. While selecting the location, drugstore in a busy shopping center, it must be enough parking space outside the drugstore. In big cities, there are certain restricted areas where parking is not allowed to prevent obstruction in smooth traffic. Such areas are not ideal. If your site is located in a shopping complex, then make sure that there is ample space available for parking the vehicles of the customers who are visiting the shops in that complex. Drugstore. As far as possible, there should not be any competitor or already existing near the location of a new drugstore. Avoid such a location. If sales potential is good in even from another store, then one can consider opening a new drugstore. If the physician who is practicing in particular area in that area and he is having good potential, new drugstore can be opened in such a in such a at such a location near to hotel, school, seminar hall. These locations are not preferable. If the site is near a restaurant, it may create problems of maintaining cleanliness. In case cold drinks or ice cream facilities also extended, then it is preferable to open a drugstore near a cinema hall because people buy drugs when they visit for a soft drink. But preferably, all these sites should be avoided because the actual customer is residing somewhere in the residential areas. Now, the factors which one has to consider for starting a new drugstore, we have discussed this. We know there are the location for starting a new drugstore could be rural area, small towns, urban area, big cities, or even a industrial town also. The factors for site we have discussed just now. Now next topic is, in order to establish a new drugstore in the metropolitan cities, following additional factors also to be considered. In metropolitan areas, following some factors we have to think over it. Paila, the very first is the site should be well connected with various modes of transport. The site has a good surrounding. There should not be congestion of traffic, flow of traffic. The essential services such as bank, post office, and warehouse must be available near the site. The rules and regulations of the municipal corporation or any other local authority does not come in the way of expansion of a drugstore. These are some additional factors that one has to think over. Acquisition of a premises for a drugstore. How the premises for a new drugstore can be acquired? It can be acquired by three ways. First, you can purchase the premises for starting your drugstore, or you can take it on a rent, or you can take it on a lease for lump sum period of time. These are the three ways for acquiring premises for starting a new drugstore. It is desirable that before the pharmacist occupies a new store premises, he or she should observe the following precautions, following points. There are some checklists which the student pharmacist has to check thoroughly. The very first is note down the date of the occupancy of the premises. On which date you have take the possession of the premises, note the date. Second, when to pay the installment of the rent if the premises is on the rent basis. Write down the dates for payment of rent. Repair the premises of the drugstore properly. Comply with the local rules and bylaws about opening and closing time of the shop, the weekly closing days of the market, etc. The local laws and bylaws of the local governing body you have to follow. Now, layout of a drugstore. First of all, we'll discuss objectives of a layout. What is layout? Layout is outline, the map of the drugstore. What are the various objectives of layout? First, attract large number of customers. The layout should be such that it is capable of attracting large number of customers, to increase sale of a drug, to reduce selling expenses to a minimum. If your plan is, if your drugstore is more ventilated, it is having good light, then the selling expenses can be reduced to a minimum. To provide customer satisfaction, create professional image and to improve general image, to minimize movement of the customer within the drugstore, to provide surveillance in order to reduce chances of pilferage and theft, to have space for reserve stock, office and resting space for the staff, to have proper entrance for incoming goods, and to have best utilization of the available space. And the last one is to provide protection to medicine from any type of damage and to maintain their potency. These are the objectives of the layout. Now, the ideal layout of a drugstore is like this. You can see it should it is the ideal layout for the drugstore. There is space for entry of the customer, then window displays there. You can see counter, phone, dispensing section is separate. Then flap door entrance. This is the entrance only for the owner and the persons who are working in the drugstore. Shelves, number of shelves, and the racks are there to store the different dosage form. Space for the freezer, refrigerator. Refrigerator, you need to have a refrigerator for storing the various drug to meet the storage condition of different types of drug. Then you can see resting place for staff is there, office storage for storage room for reserve stock, entrance for incoming code. This is the ideal layout. Now, legal aspects of a drugstore. There are few legal aspects that you have to comply when you are thinking to start a drugstore, whether it is wholesale drugstore or retail drugstore. Now, wholesale drugstore. The very first is minimum qualification. The candidate must be registered pharmacist with the State Pharmacy Council. And the minimum qualification to get registered with the State Pharmacy Council is diploma in pharmacy from a recognized institution. The institute must be duly recognized by the Pharmacy Council of India. For starting a wholesale drugstore, matriculation with 4 years of experience in selling of drug in a chemist shop on salary basis is sufficient. Diploma in pharmacy and also being registered as a registered pharmacist. A person who has sufficient capital and is interested to start a new drugstore can also do so by appointing a registered pharmacist on whole-time basis. Suppose the person is willing to start a drugstore, he is having land, building, enough capital, but he is not a registered pharmacist. Then such a person even can become a owner of the drugstore by appointing a person who is known as registered pharmacist on a whole-time basis. Minimum space not specified in D&C Act and Rules 1945, but for a new retail drugstore, desirable area is 10 square meter. Minimum area required for starting a new retail drugstore is 10 square meter. Minimum area required to open a new wholesale drugstore is again 10 square meter. However, minimum desirable area to open new combined wholesale and retail drugstore is 15 square meter. It is 15. If you are running wholesale and retail medical store simultaneously, then the minimum area required is 15 square meter. Here in this slide, the minimum qualification for starting a new retail drugstore is person must be registered pharmacist, and for wholesale drugstore, the candidate must be matriculate with having 4 years of experience in chemist shop for selling of drug. That is enough. Then store arrangement. There should be sufficient number of racks to store drugs and pharmaceutical preparation for storage of antibiotics, vitamin products, vaccines, serums, enzymatic preparation, and other such preparations which are required to be stored at a temperature between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. Refrigerator is necessary. And last one is a license is required to sell, stock, exhibit to sell drug. License is very important. So there are four legal requirements that you have to satisfy. First, minimum qualification. Second, minimum space, store arrangement, and license. Now, what are the various documents that are required for obtaining a license for retail as well as wholesale drugstore? We will discuss it in a next session. Thank you.